Hello, my name is Erica Asimwe.
And I'm Richard Taylor.
And welcome to the Crossing the Raging River podcast. In the last episodes, we introduced you to a few concepts, especially the idea of crossing the raging river. We say that leadership is like a journey and leaders have to move from one side to another. And that in that river, there are different challenges, different things that they are facing. What kind of things do leaders meet in the river when they are trying to cross that raging river?
Well, I mean, leaders meet a lot of crocodiles.
Yes.
And they meet a lot of hippos.
And snakes.
And snakes.
Yes.
And snakes. Now, Erica, which one of those are you the most afraid of?
I'm mostly afraid of snakes. I think because they're the ones that I see everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I don't think I would. Actually, there's a funny story about how I slept next to a snake in my room when I was younger.
You slept next to a snake. Were you crazy?
No, I felt it came to our room. I felt something soft and I was like, what's that? And I was like, oh my God, it's a snake. I really screamed. That was the most traumatizing thing.
Oh.
I had to move from my room for 2 weeks because
I feel afraid.
I couldn't go back. I don't know how it entered the room, but it was just sleeping. It didn't do anything to us.
I think the leaders who are listening to this podcast are wondering if our intention is to scare them.
No, but I'm afraid of snakes. Yeah.
Okay, so you're afraid of snakes. I'm afraid of crocodiles. That's my most afraid, the crocodile. But here's a question for you. What is actually, statistically, the most dangerous animal in Africa to human beings?
I think it's hippos because they've killed most people.
You're right. You were paying attention. Why is it?
It has killed most people. I think we underestimate its potential. It always comes slowly and comes up.
Because they look so slow.
I know.
But I think they can even clock hippos at like 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, you know, the hippo is something that we often underestimate.
Yes.
And yet it can be very dangerous.
So much, yeah. And in Burundi, we actually have along Lake Tanganyika so many hippos.
Yes, a huge lake.
Yeah, and we are advised that sometimes in the evenings to not go close to the lake because that's when they come out. So you need to be very careful.
Yeah, I've even been driving in Bujumbura. I went to see Livingston Rock one day.
Yeah.
That small rock that marks where Livingston came. And we were driving back into the city and hippos were coming up from the road and we had to avoid them.
Yeah. If you were walking, you would not be sitting here today. And before we go deeper, I wanted to share about a crocodile that was very famous in Burundi called Gustav.
Gustav. The crocodile had a name.
Everybody knew that crocodile. I'm not sure how many people really saw it, but it was rumored to have killed up to 200 to 300 people.
Oh my goodness, I'm glad I never saw Gustav.
Yes, he disappeared a few years ago, but back to the topic, I just had to mention the name Gustav.
Wow. So Gustav was a crocodile that was even famous for the trouble that Gustav could cause.
Yes. So Richard, what are these hippos, crocodiles, and snakes we're talking about in leadership?
Erica, as fun as the topic of hippos and crocodiles and snakes is, we're not really talking about literal hippos, crocodiles, and snakes, although might be some leaders that also face those. We're really going back to that idea we were talking about in the last podcast about how what's upstream flows downstream and how our beliefs, our values, the mindsets that we have such a strong influence on our leadership. So these hippos, crocodiles, and snakes, they're those kinds of beliefs and mindsets either within ourselves or within our communities, the people that we're serving, that really hold us back from accomplishing something, from getting to a better place and crossing the raging river. That's what they are.
And what examples do we have of these? Yeah.
Well, within the Abundant Leadership Institute, which we both work within, we've actually come up with 6 common ones, 6 hippos, crocodiles, and snakes that the majority of people will face at one time or another, either themselves or in their communities. And the first one of those is called the quest for power. The quest for power. And I wanted to ask you a question about that. Is power, Erica, do you think it's like a good thing Or is power a bad thing, or is it just neutral?
I think it was meant to be good. It was meant to be good, but I've mostly seen power used in the wrong way.
Okay, so it's meant to be good, but you've seen it used in the wrong way.
Yes.
Sometimes what we talk about is that power itself actually is neither good or bad.
Yeah.
Power just exists. Leaders have power. That's what makes them leaders. We may have a lot of power. We may have only a little bit of power. But regardless, because leaders have influence, they also have power. But the difference is, how do leaders actually use power? And what is the purpose of power? If we use power in the service of others, it can make a big impact. But if all we're about is a quest for power, we want to bring more and more for ourselves. If we think power is like a fixed resource, and if we give it away to other people, if we empower other people, then we actually lose power, then it can cause a lot of toxic things to happen. It can cause a lot of people to be hurt in the process. And we've seen that, haven't we?
We have. We've seen people get to the top, and when they get to the top, they start looking down on everybody else. They can do anything to stay at the top, even if it means treating people badly, embezzling funds, because they want to keep that power and have the final say over everything.
We've seen that have a big impact here in the African context, haven't we?
We have a lot of leaders who have stayed in power for a long time because they feel like if they leave power, then they will not have any influence after that. So we've seen that happen a lot.
That's right. And it's not just here. I mean, even if all you have to look at the news headlines to see power being abused, whether in small institutions or in countries. So the quest for power is one of those big crocodiles that we have to overcome. The second one you know about, right? Tell us more about it.
Yes, the trap of fatalism is a very common one. I think sometimes it has just become part of our normal lives. We say statements like, this is just how things are. Whatever happens, happens. It's the belief that the future has already been determined. There is nothing we can do about it. Things are just the way they'll always be. There's a common statement in Uganda, there's nothing good that can come from Karamoja. So it means everything that comes from there is bad. They are just expecting negative from the beginning to the end. And I'm just imagining if a leader has this kind of mindset and is leading an organization with the fact that things will just happen. He will not proactively plan. He will not have a vision because he will feel like, after all, this vision will not be accomplished because things are already predetermined. It's a very limiting mindset that stops people from growing. It takes you back to the fixed mindset because you feel like there is nothing that you can do about it.
Economic studies actually even show that in societies where fatalism is strong, where it's really rooted within the context or the culture, maybe because there's been generations of poverty, maybe because of belief systems that people have, maybe in animistic spirits or other things that mess around with our lives, that it actually seriously impedes economic development. So this trap of fatalism is something that we have to face as leaders, and we have to find ways for ourselves and other people to overcome.
And sometimes we're the ones who are at the center of it, telling people this is how things have been done in this organization for a long time. I think that relates to another
especially when the young people are trying to bring change, right?
Yes. I think it also relates to another challenge that leaders face called the fear of change, where we just want to be comfortable with what we have.
Fear of change. Yes. We live in a world where a lot of times when we feel out of control with the things around us, then what we do is we kind of take this posture. We would rather stick with the small thing that we have and that we feel like we have control over than something better if it means that we have to change. And I think that's human nature. A lot of human beings fear change. In fact, there are actually very few people who are wired to be the ones who lead change. And it often takes seeing other people bring change for us to follow with it.
Unfortunately, COVID forced all of us to change. We don't have to wait for such a huge epidemic like COVID for us to change and be forced into it. We need, as leaders, to be proactive about change. Even think about it and what potential changes could happen in this generation, in this organization. How can we prepare ourselves for this change? And AI is one of those. We're coming back to AI, but
you like to come back to AI.
Yeah. So how can we prepare ourselves for those changes and not always see changes? The elephant that we don't want to talk about.
Well said, well said. I was actually thinking about how a fear of change has been throughout history, and in the Bible, in the scriptures, there's a very powerful story in Numbers where they talk about the people of Israel coming out of a land of scarcity.
Yes.
Egypt.
Yeah.
You know, this place of slavery, this place of bondage, this place where they were treated as like they were not worth anything, that they were subhuman. God brings them out of that through Moses. He takes them through the desert. He brings them to the promised land.
Yes.
Then they send 12 people in, spies, to see what is in the promised land.
Yes.
When the spies come back, they bring a report. And Erica, do you know this story?
Yes.
Okay. How many of the spies, what do the spies all say is true about the land?
Actually, maybe you should tell the story. Go ahead and tell it.
The spies say that what's true about the land is that it's full of milk and honey.
Yes.
But 10 of the spies say they shouldn't go because there's giants. They're afraid of those giants. Only 2 want to go. And those spies who don't want to go, they fear that change. They would rather be in the desert than face those giants.
Yes.
We often have that as leaders, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We do. So this is a real fear that most of us have to overcome. And as leaders, I think we need to embrace the fact that change will happen, whether we like it or not. And it's usually out of our control. What we can do is plan. Plan for that change so that when it comes, we are ready and we don't feel overwhelmed by all the changes that we need to implement.
Yes, well said. Now, what's the fourth hippo?
The fourth hippo is actually something I struggle with a lot myself. It's the chaos of disorganization.
The chaos of disorganization.
Yes. Yes. It's one thing to have great ideas as a leader. It's one thing to have a vision. But how are we going to achieve this vision? What plans do we have in place to be able to achieve these big goals and dreams we have? I think I have the challenge of being so excited about what the future would look like, but not really taking time to sit down and plan step by step of how we can get to that place. And I know that there are so many leaders who have great ideas and
big visions,
but have not been able to accomplish them to date because they are not ready to sit down and plan and build a strategy around that. Yeah,
it's like you want to cross the raging river and you have a vision to do so, and you say to all the people, let's go, and you jump into the river to go across, but you haven't actually created a plan to keep all of you safe, to build a bridge to get across.
Exactly. So this is a big one, I think, for most of us. Sometimes we really struggle with this.
Chaos of disorganization. I like that.
Yeah. And the next one is around the burden of isolation. What is that about?
This is all about loneliness. You know, they say it's lonely at the top. And that's often true because often leaders try and create distance between themselves and their followers. And that distance that they create, it causes isolation. It causes loneliness. And it causes them to feel like when they're taking those big decisions, that everything rests on them, that they're separated from the people that they're leading. And over time, that burden can really become too much for a leader.
Yes. And so I think sometimes this is caused by the people that they are leading. Sometimes when you get into a certain position, I make fun of this because in Burundi, when you get into a certain position, they forget your name. You become the position. So you'll be called Dej, like director. That's your name, director. And they will not remember.
And names and titles carry a lot.
Yeah, so that creates a sense of separation because the way people will be greeting you, they'll be greeting you in a specific way. They'll feel like, I cannot sit on the same seat as the director.
Even when you're going for lunch, you get put at a separate table or in a different place.
Yeah, so that creates this isolation and you feel like there is no one that you can speak to within the organization. I think who is responsible for breaking this kind of mindset within the organization?
I think it ultimately needs to be the leader choosing to do the kinds of culturally appropriate things that draw them close to the people that are within the organization. But leaders can also engage with other leaders. It's not just in the organization. It's also, do we choose to have mentors in our lives? Do we choose to have people who can walk alongside us and support us? You know, we talked about the story of Moses. You know, there's a particular battle where his brother Aaron, who was alongside him, he was so exhausted. he helped to raise his arms
Yeah.
so that there could be victory. And sometimes as leaders, we also don't take enough time to connect with other leaders.
Yeah, so we need to build a community around us, because sometimes we're not the only people facing this challenge.
Exactly.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel when someone else already has been through this and can give you a quick way out and support you in that challenging situation that you are in. I think the last one is something that I speak so passionately about, because I have seen it a lot in the African context, and I think it has affected us here in Africa in a very significant way, more than other challenges. It's the indignity of dependence.
The indignity of dependency.
Yes, it's really big. It's the idea that solutions should always come from outside. We don't feel capable of being the people who are to provide the first solutions. In fact, we look at what we have as less than what would come from elsewhere. So whenever we are faced with challenges, the first thing is, who can pay for this? And it's not, the answer is usually not us. It's usually, if I had enough money for this, if I could get a donor or funding from outside. That's the reason that we have been stuck in this cycle of aid for a very long time. And right now we are really suffering the consequences of aid being cut to Africa.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember a book by Dambisa Moyo, a great African author who wrote a book called Dead Aid, and she was really challenging this idea of constantly being dependent on outside. She said it's not helping us to build up our own strength from within Africa, and she really advocated more for trade.
Yeah, and I think as much as us as leaders are depending on outside people for solutions, we also take it to our organizations and the teams that we lead. We are, as the leaders, the center of all the solutions, and we are creating a sense of dependency in the organization, because when we are not there, no one is able to step up. We do everything, even the simplest thing that other people can do, and we are creating this dependency within the organizations, within the communities we serve, because we go to the community and give them everything. Even the simple things they can do for themselves, we don't give them the space.
And then we rob them of their dignity.
Exactly. We don't give them the space to do that.
You're very passionate about this topic, aren't you? I have a feeling we're going to talk about it more in this podcast.
Yes, we'll talk deeply about this
That's
a bit
great.
later. But it's a huge problem. And as leaders, we need to think about what we have today and what God has placed in our hands.
That's
and how
right.
we can use that. It's not always that solutions should come from outside. There's already great things happening, and God has given us the gifts we need to be able to make the changes
I'm
we
inspired,
need to make.
Erica.
Yeah.
But these crocodiles and hippos and snakes, they're really real. The quest for power, the trap of fatalism, the fear of change, the chaos of disorganization, the indignity of dependency, the burden of isolation. These are very real things, but we don't have to be trapped in those, can we?
No.
These are rooted in a scarcity mentality.
Yeah.
They're rooted in a mindset that is saying, there's not enough for everybody. But, is there anything that we can do about this as leaders?
Yes, there is. There's a lot I think we've shared even in this episode about different things that we can do as leaders to overcome these challenges. But I think ultimately as leaders, we need to move from this place of scarcity to a place of abundance. I think we'll be talking more deeply about what this abundant mindset looks like. How do we overcome these challenges by adopting this abundant mindset that helps us to overcome the challenges we are facing? Yeah.
That's right. And how do we escape that scarcity mentality that often is the root of all of these crocodiles, hippos, and snakes? How do we really overcome those things? And that's really what we're going to be talking about in the next episode, isn't it? We're going to be talking about what a scarcity mentality actually is, and maybe some ways that we can start to overcome it.
Yes, and I think it also starts as we are going to speak deeply about this in the next episode. We can start thinking about it. It starts with self-awareness. Because sometimes we are always, like in the previous episodes we mentioned, we point at other people and we're not willing to look at ourselves and say, where in my life do I need to identify this?
So it really starts with us, doesn't it?
It starts with us.
Leading ourselves, the most difficult person to lead.
Yeah, because if we adopt better mindsets, then our organizations can also benefit from that.
Well said, Erica.
Yeah. So I think we're going to close this episode here and thank everyone for following. As usual, we invite you to go to our website at kurumbuka.org/podcast to access more resources that can help you grow. Always remember to share this with another leader who you would like to have the experiences that you're having as well. So what was the last word from you, Richard, about this?
Avoid the crocodiles, the hippos, and the snakes of leadership.
Bye-bye, Gustav.
Bye-bye, Gustav.